Matt. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me today. So the purpose of our interview today is for me just to be able to understand your leadership style, some of your traits, and how you've handled different challenges and opportunities throughout your career. So before we continue on, do you confirm your previous consent for me to record this interview?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so as we know, your name is Matt. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Matt. I was a supervisor several places, and we've talked about that. I started as a sergeant at the sheriff's office up in Missouri. I supervised about a dozen or 15 deputies, road deputies, detectives, stuff like that. I was a supervisor for the state of Missouri, for Missouri Bureau of Narcotics and a couple of other agencies where I supervised guys and gals statewide. But the one we're talking about today is when I was the customer service manager at Bass Pro Shop down in Branson.
Okay, so customer service manager at Bass Pro Shop. How long were you in that role?
I was the manager for about two and a half years. I worked for Bass Pro longer, but then just to get up to that.
Okay, what was the largest amount of people you ever managed at a time?
Average was 20 to 30. Seasonal, like for Christmas and stuff, it would get up between 50 and 60.
50 and 60.
Yeah.
Okay, and would you say that retail most appropriately
Yeah.
represents Bass Pro as an industry?
Absolutely.
Okay, so as a customer service manager at Bass Pro Shop, what was one of your greatest achievements while working there, and why is it important?
Sure. Well, Bass Pro has a lot of measurables, a lot of things that when you buy something, there's opportunities to make additional sales. Gear Guard, which is like a warranty. If you put your fishing rod in the door and slam it and it breaks the tip off, bring it back and they'll replace it. Bass Pro has a credit card. Bass Pro always did a monthly drawing, whether it was National Wild Turkey Federation, Rocky Mountain. So they wanted to round up to all that money would go to those type of organizations, those charitable organizations. And then the last thing was when you get your receipt, at the very bottom there was a 1-800 number to call, and you call that number and you can comment on the store and comment on the service you received. So those four measurables, we consistently were in the low teens, high 20s, and there were 50-ish stores, maybe 48 stores total. So we were in the upper middle, but we were never top 10. And after getting everyone to start buying into kind of why that stuff was important, we were able to get all four of those measurables up in the top 5. Credit cards, we were number 1 and 2, and we were the smallest store in the nation at that time. So our credit card scores were always good. The Gear Guards were always up in the top. The monthly thing we were always in, not always, but as we got into it, everybody was top 5. And then the surveys, the phone surveys, we were always up top 3 or 4, which that just shows that they have buy-in and they're willing to ask those questions to the customers to get what we're trying to track.
And when you say buy-in, what are you referring to when it comes to the employees?
Sure. And we had kind of talked about it a little bit. So these employees are not necessarily professional career people. They're either students or they're maybe a little bit older people, older folks. And so this isn't their get up, put a tie on, and show up every day for my next 20 years. So getting them to have buy-in when some of them are making minimum wage or just a little bit over, it's a challenge. I mean, we talked about it, right? Bass Pro is about passion. It's about customer experience and stuff like that. And getting the employees who maybe their car broke down, and now they go, for the next 3 shifts, it's gonna take to get my tire fixed, right? Because I'm only making X amount, and this tire is gonna cost $150. Knowing that they have to come to work and still perform, still do their job, takes a lot of buy-in. And I think by being brutally honest with them and saying, here's what we do, here's why we do it, and stuff like that, once they know they can trust me, they would follow kind of what I kind of had them do,
Right. And that was attributable to the significant increase in all the
Right.
measurables, which
Yeah.
allowed you to be a better store. Great. Okay, so now that we've talked about your greatest achievement, I want to run through some of these characteristic traits of servant leadership that I have here. And what we're going to do is you're going to grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 on
Okay.
each of these traits. So 1 is never used, 5 is always used.
Okay.
So the first trait we're going to look at is listening. How often would you say that you used listening?
5. You're always listening to employees, and like we talked about a little earlier, the idea of a manager is to put out the fires before they start, right? That's all you do all day is you sense something might be happening, and if you can be proactive and solve it before it happens, then you don't clean up the mess you've already dealt with. So listening is incredibly important.
Very important.
Yeah.
And what would you say about empathy?
Empathy is also important. I think there's a fine line between empathy and professionalism. You know, I would rate that as a 4, 3, or 4.
What about healing?
What about what?
Healing.
Healing. I would probably rate that a 2, only because my supervisory skill or my strengths are very direct. You know, and I think people are okay with that because I don't approach it in an overbearing way. But yeah, I mean, if somebody's having a really rough time, then absolutely if I notice something out on the floor or whatever, I wanted to pull them aside and go, hey, what's going on? You know, and try to, without prying, right, work through whatever it is they're going through. And so that way they can be productive back out on the floor and also be a decent human being. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next trait is awareness.
5.
5.
Yeah.
How about persuasion?
I think a solid 4. I think persuasion sometimes has negative connotations in that it makes somebody do what they necessarily don't want to do. And if they buy in to the culture, they want to do it, right? You just have to kind of guide them or direct them or give them bumpers so that they can have that buy-in.
Absolutely. What about conceptualization?
A 3.
3. Foresight?
A 5.
Stewardship?
Stewardship, 4 or 5. I think that once they know that I'm committed to them, right, committed to them and the company, and would do everything in my power to make sure that they have the best ship they can have. And like we talked about, they always take the breaks on time. They never miss a meal. They always get off within reason, get off on time. When they're off the clock, I don't want to bother them. Their time is their time. As a manager, my job is to be that buffer and let them have their freedom and let them have their lunches and their breaks. So when they're back, they can focus on doing their job.
Definitely. What would you say for commitment to growth of people?
Commitment, I think, is a 5. I think that's incredibly important because if people sense you're not committed, if you're just giving them some kind of answer, they're not going to buy in.
Yeah, definitely. What about interest in building community?
5. 4. I would say, I don't want to say everything's a 5, only because I think there have to be levels, right? But the community is important because you want them to be able to work well together. You want them to have fun together, right? And so, yeah, community is very important.
I agree. Okay, so now that we've talked about your greatest achievement and we've gone over some of the characteristic traits that make you a servant leader, can you tell me about a significant challenge that you faced at Bass Pro Shop, preferably related to an ethical dilemma?
Sure. And like we had, said earlier, the problems of Bass Pro are not necessarily as critical or as engaging as problems with law enforcement or anything like that. But they're still important nonetheless, right? Because to the people that are dealing with them, it's the most important thing they're dealing with right now. From a customer point of view, my goal was always to try to make the customer happy, right? It's a pair of boots that don't fit if they're out of warranty or something like that. Is it worth a bunch of bad blood over an $89 pair of boots, or is it better just to go, hey, let's try to get you a better pair of boots and we'll figure out a way to cover the difference. So that's with the customers. With the employees, they're humans, right? So they come to work with problems. They at work have problems with coworkers they don't get along with or whatever. And so my goal was to be that sponge, right, that could take everyone's comments, criticisms, problems, whatever, and kind of like this fatherly advice, dole it back out to them so they can go back out and do their job without playing favorites or anything like that.
Okay, So in regard to that, and we're gonna do the same exercise we did earlier where we rated your characteristic
Mhm.
traits. So we're gonna do that again in the same situation as when you were facing a significant challenge. How often did you use those same traits? So again, how often would you say you use listening?
5.
Empathy?
3. If there was a big challenge, I just wanted to solve it.
Mhm.
At that point, especially if it was a more immediate challenge, right? It's like parenting at some point. I don't care who's making the noise, I just want silence, so we can do our thing. So empathy falls down, I think, a little bit on that.
Okay. What about healing?
In the moment, maybe not as important, but after the fact, I think if you're dealing with something and you just have to resolve it so people can get on with their daily work, it's a 2. After the fact, I think you need to touch base with the employees and kind of work through what caused that in order to keep from happening down the road or anything else.
Absolutely. What would you rate that on a scale of 1 to 5?
In the moment, a 2.
A 2. What about awareness?
A 5.
Persuasion?
4 again.
Okay. Conceptualization?
I think when you're dealing with challenges, I think that probably is a little bit higher because it's easy to just take one side, right? Or take the side that makes the most sense to me in the moment, but there might be another side that somebody hasn't even thought about. And so if you get that second opinion or second side to go, oh yeah, that might actually work or whatever. So yeah, right on.
Okay. Foresight?
5.
Stewardship?
I think stewardship is so important. 5. I think that sometimes conflict happens because of not necessarily training, but just understanding, right? And so if there's a misunderstanding with something and I didn't do a good enough job explaining it, or if I didn't do a good enough job of solving it early and it's escalated, I need to take responsibility for that and make sure that the folks know, hey, that's on me, that's my fault. I need to clean it up with both or however many involved, and let's resolve it, and I'll take the hit on that one.
Gotcha. Okay. What about commitment to growth of people?
5.
5. And interest in building community?
I think when you're talking about conflict, maybe a 3 again, because at that point I'm just trying to patch the thing or put a Band-Aid on it or whatever.
That makes sense.
In the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So just reflecting on your overall leadership, what was the mission, vision, or strategy of Bass Pro Shop?
The mission is driven by passion, customer number 1, quality and value products, teamwork and family, and ingenuity and pioneer spirit. I think and we talked about it, right? They don't sell bacon, they don't sell beans, they don't sell electricity at Bass Pro Shop. When you go there, you're buying an experience, something you're going to go out and do. You're going to go fishing, you're going to go camping, you're going to go hiking. You're there because you want to do an experience. So it's so important that the employees embrace that, right? And they treat it like what these folks are going to. They may have saved up for a long time to get to go on this hike or this fishing trip or whatever. We want to make sure that we give them the best information we can so they can make really good decisions, so they don't end up out there in the middle of nowhere with a junky tent that leaks or a fishing rod that is totally inappropriate for whatever it is they're going to fish with. So, I think having that culture, that buy-in from everyone is just absolutely, it has to happen, otherwise they'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's related somewhat to an entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say, or how important was having an entrepreneurial mindset in achieving the mission, the customer number 1, all of that with Bass Pro Shop?
It's very important. I think that the mid-level and managers, once they have been proven, they have a lot of leeway to make decisions. They have a lot of leeway to solve problems without escalating it to the store manager or whatever. There are times that the store manager has to be involved, and there are times you might make the wrong decision, and then you take the heat and you move on. The cool thing about Bass Pro, and we talked about it earlier, if you make the wrong decision, instead of calling it a mistake or whatever, they call it an opportunity, right? And so if I do something wrong and the store manager sits me down, he's going to give me an opportunity to learn from it, opportunity to further my training and to do better, you know? So it's just cool the mindset that they have about all of that.
Yeah, that really is. Okay, so now that we understand the mission and the vision of Bass Pro Shop, I want to go ahead and rate again your characteristics related to the entrepreneurial mindset. So these are going to be different characteristics, but we're still going to be rating them on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 was never used, 5 was always used. So how important would you say the need to achieve is in having an
Need to
entrepreneurial?
achieve is a 5, absolutely a 5, yeah.
What about openness to experience?
I think that's a 4, only because I don't want to hit everything with a 5, right? The need to achieve is, if you're talking about in a retail world or anything where there's measurable metrics, I think if you want to be great, you have to have that as a 5 or a 6 even, you know, because you don't want to be average. You know, the experience, yeah, I think it's important, but it falls underneath that need to achieve. So
Okay. What about innovative and creative abilities?
I think that's very high also. I think that's a 4. You know, in the retail world, things move so fast. The products are so new that if you're not up to date with the latest stuff, you don't want someone to show up and know more about fishing lures than the fishing guy, or know more about archery than the guys in the bow shop. You know, that just makes them look bad. So they want to be the cutting edge of what's happening in the sporting goods and know everything there is to know about it.
And how important would you say risk propensity is?
A 4.
4?
Yeah.
What about proactivity and work ethic? I know you touched on that a lot earlier.
Sure. I think that's a 5. I think that you can have fun at work, right? There's times to enjoy and there's times to work, and there's a fine balance between just forcing everyone to be little robots for 8 hours and understanding there's going to be a natural pause where they can chat and you know, let their hair down and just relax a little bit. So then when that next rush or whatever comes in, they're ready for it. So yeah, I think when you have professional employees, they have a lot more leeway to do that stuff, a lot more freedom.
Absolutely. What about entrepreneurial self-efficacy? Belief that you can perform your distinct roles, your tasks, belief in yourself.
I think that's very important. I think that is probably a solid 4 or 5. I think that if you don't have belief in your abilities to do something, it's going to be hard to convince others to have buy-in on me. And so it's like when I was at the sheriff's office, we used to talk about you put a mask on, right? Because I'm not really the same person who at a car stop is mean and yelling and all that stuff. You have to remember to take your mask off when you get home and go back to who you are. And the same with any kind of leadership. There's times you may not know the answer, right? But there's a dozen people looking at you, so you have to put that mask on that I know what I'm doing and do your best to resolve it. So I think it's very important.
Definitely. What about internal locus of control? The belief that you control your decisions, that there's no outside influences, it's not, and nothing is determined by luck or fate.
Personally, I think I'm a 5 with that.
5.
Yeah, I think that's just my nature.
Okay. Can you provide me one specific example of one of these traits that could have helped in realizing or achieving Bass Pro Shop's mission of making customer number 1?
Sure. You know, I think that stewardship and that servant leadership are so important. And we talked about it a little bit, but your employees are they're the blood of the organization. Without them doing their job, everything else comes apart really quickly. And so if you have employees who aren't happy, if you have employees who don't feel valued, if you have employees who really aren't sure if they fit, you know, they're not going to do their job as well as they could. So as a supervisor, you want your employees to be super efficient, super effective, motivated, and ready to go to work. They're humans, right? So they bring all of that other turmoil in, and you need to be able to identify that, you know, this employee is not the same as they normally are. Without prying again, what's going on? You know, do they just need to go take 5 minutes and do a walk, or they need to be off the floor today and do something in the back, you know, because they just had some bad news.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that not taking ownership of your employees, but just taking responsibility for them to the point where you want what they need more than you want what you want. And that if you can do that, and they start to recognize that you're doing that, I think they will follow you through just about anything.
Absolutely. So aside from servant leadership and the entrepreneurial mindset, can you identify 2 significant lessons or attributes that you believe were essential for your success?
Without servant leadership and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, aside from servant leadership and the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, I think that the one about listening to other ideas, right? That's incredibly important, because just because I'm in that position doesn't mean I always know the answer. A lot of times I may not have even seen whatever it is we're dealing with in the moment, and somebody else might have experience that I don't know, and they have to feel comfortable enough to come to me and go, hey, what about this, right? And if they do that, I go, holy crap, holy smokes, that's a good thought, let's work that. That's important. I think that being responsible to self and calling yourself out to them whenever you do make a mistake, right? I never wanted to be late for work, ever wanted to be late. I never wanted to wear dirty pants. I never wanted to not have my shirt pressed. If I show up and I look in disarray, which I learned that from the sheriff's office, right? The first thing you get is officer presence. So when you show up, you should look professional. If I show up looking out of sorts, everyone sees it, and everyone else is gonna think, oh, it's okay if I look out of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by setting that standard, people will notice that. Is there one more or not?
Yeah, do you think that there's anything you wish you could have specifically avoided, or that could have potentially derailed or delayed your success?
I think the hard thing is playing favorites sometimes, right? You have employees who show up, they're great workers, they're smart, they're motivated, they want to be there, they don't make any mistakes, all of their measurable numbers are always really good, and they become your kind of little favorites, right? You want to give them the better shifts, you want to give them the better locations in the store, the better, give them the opportunities for more advancement, stuff like that. And there's others that sometimes they just need a chance, right? Like, did we talk about Laura here, or was that earlier when you and I were
Yeah, we
talking?
talked about Laura.
Okay, like her, right? Once she got the chance to do credit cards, she excelled at it. So it's a matter of not just looking at your favorites with the spotlight, but looking at the other employees and going, what can I put the light on them for that they'll glow? That's something that's going to be their strength, that they can start making a better difference in how they feel, and then how the company functions.
So just finding everyone's strengths,
Yeah,
making sure.
trying to find their strengths, and not everyone is going to have that same strength. Some people, might have something totally different. I mean, we had folks who could make the store look like the front of a magazine. Everything was all lined up perfectly and organized, and that wasn't my strength. And so I would just go, yeah, go do it. And they loved it. They loved that part of it. But it's a matter of going, that person's good at that. Take someone new and show them how to do it also. And you take somebody with you so they can kind of see how you do it, right? And letting them have a little bit of ownership in teaching and training also.
Definitely. Do you have any final thoughts on anything, or is there anything that you want to touch on a little bit more that you felt like we kind of rushed over earlier?
No, I like we talked about, I think that being a servant leader is the most important thing you can do. I think that anyone who tries to lead from a position of, absolute or whatever is doomed to fail. Empathy is incredibly important, and I may have downplayed it a little bit, but listening actively, not just listening, but to listen and then being able to help resolve it is just so important. And once the folks sense that you're trying to do what's best for them, they will react, and usually they react positively for that.
Perfect. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I just want to say thank you for all of your time today, and thank you for giving me all this information.
That'd be $25.
All right.